So I will confess, first of all, that I'm of two minds about these retirement parties. On the one hand, they're very sad. On the other hand, we get to eat pinkberry. So I don't know whether to root for more people to retire.
You can put in your order now.
And I'll buy if that's okay.
Or just spend the $3 and buy it at the retirement. I think as Steve said, this is the first time I can remember that we have a retirement party where Vicki contacted me this morning, really very upset and disappointed, but she said she thought she had the flu. There was no way she could come. If she came, we'd all get sick, she said. On the other hand, why waste a good occasion for a party? And as was said, that really speaks about Vicki. I didn't know Mark. I didn't know Vicki in law school. Somehow I missed law school on the pathway of life. But I met her as a layperson. She was a Wexner Fellow, for those of you who know what that is. And I met her when she didn't know what AJC was. She was in the Wexner program. Steve, you know the Wexner program very well. I happened to be invited to meet with the group, and she became interested. And I watched her begin to travel with AJC, and sort of dip her toe in the New York region originally, Michael, and then become a member of the Board of Governors. And then I remember that she called and said, "Can I come over and chat with you?" I had no idea what it was about. And you try to work in your own mind, anticipating, sort of to get in the frame of mind. And she looked at me and said, "I have a change of heart. I've done everything in corporate law. I want to do something new." And I've grown to love AJC so much that I want to work here. And so we gave her a very easy task. For those of you who were around, that was to manage the strategic planning process. Now, for those of you who come in the last 8 years or 7 years, you don't know what that is because we haven't had one. But the one we developed under Vicki's management was, I'd like to joke, entered into the Guinness Book of World Records as arguably the most complex strategic planning process involving more people and more committees on more subjects than ever in the history of mankind or humankind. And amazingly, with the help of Jane Silverman and Marvin Israel, she pulled it off. So Steve, when the bad news hit in 2008, 2009, really thanks to Vicki and the efforts of this process, we had not a financial cushion, but we had an organizational cushion, because we had already made some important decisions about what we were and what we weren't. And so when we had to contract, we were already way ahead of the game. Other organizations were scrambling. This caught them by surprise. It was September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, and everything followed thereafter. And in a way, we managed that process, I think, much more skillfully and successfully, in large part because of the groundwork that Vicki had laid. Although, by the way, the groundwork was for future growth, not future contraction. But we could still apply the lessons. And in the last 8 years, again, for those of you who've worked with her, as many of us have, and I think Steve said it very well, she really became the bridge to the new world. The new world in which not just corporations, but any organization, in our case an NGO, needs to operate. And we know, it was no secret, that there were some at the time who resisted, who felt this was a kind of corporatization of AJC. And that was not all the goal. It was an effort to make AJC far more efficient as an NGO in a highly competitive and fast-changing world. And I think the greatest legacy to Vicki, to any of us, is that what we do outlives our own tenure. Because at some stage in life, no matter how young we think we are, the moment comes when we walk out the door for the last time. And then the question is, what do we leave behind? And in Vicki's case, she leaves a lot behind that will outlive her for many years to come. We are streamlined, we are efficient, our governance is much more transparent, Our budgeting process is far more effective. Mark brought you on board, Janet Becker on board, and Rick Hine on board, who are enduring legacies to her work. She, as Steve said, de-siloed the organization. For those of you who saw on her office door, silo with the line across it. She was determined. And for those of you who know AJC's history, that was a monumental task without a predictable outcome. Well, we're de-siloed. And that is in large measure to Vicki. In that sort of obscure area called governance and bylaws, which few pay attention to, we are so much ahead of the game compared to where we were a few years ago because of the things that she quietly did. I don't know if there's a place in heaven for people who work on bylaws. I'll tell you.
They've already done their time in hell.
Exactly.
Took away my punchline. It's a bit like in the Vietnam War days. There was a slogan. Sometimes it was emblazoned on the back of the jacket. I know I'm going to heaven because I've been to hell and back, referring to service in Vietnam. So I don't know if it's quite that standard mark, but I mean in just so many ways. I think her imprint on this agency will be very long lasting. And what more can one ask for? And last but by no means least, Vicki had these very special human qualities. They sort of resonated deep in her kishkas. She was a warm colleague. She opened her home on many occasions. She was a very committed Jew. She spent lots of time at B'nai Jeshurun, her favorite synagogue. She cared deeply about these issues. Her father was from Germany, managed to escape the Nazis. So for her, this was not just an acquired taste. This was embedded in her DNA. And again, I want to just come back to the point that Mark made in finishing, because it's really a window into character. And at the end of the day, all of this is about character. It's not about resume, and it's not about colleges, and it's not about other stuff. It's about character. Life is about character. And the window on Vicki's character came the day that she came to my office and closed the door and looked me in the eye, and tears started welling up, and she said to me, "Victor's been diagnosed with a form of cancer that's aggressive, and they say he's not here for long." And if I remember correctly, the initial prediction was maybe Victor held on for 5 years, and there were some very difficult times in those 5 years, extraordinarily difficult. I'm sure we don't know the half of it, Mark. But there were also some moments where they could actually travel together to San Francisco and visit their son Jared, and other things that were meaningful to them. And if Victor had those extra 4 years of life, including some moments of genuine happiness and mobility, it's undoubtedly due to the fact that Vicki was a loving wife to Victor and also a tiger, the best sense of the word. She was not going to accept the doctor's prediction. She was going to become an expert on everything she could, on every doctor, on every possible cure, on every new medicine, wherever it was. And she was going to do everything possible to protect and defend her husband. And yet, remarkably, she managed to compartmentalize. For any of you who've been through this process, it's so overwhelming that to be able to also work and separate yourself from it and talk to us and listen to us and pursue bylaws issues, and at the same time know that there's a man over on East End Avenue who's between life and death and who depends so heavily on your commitment to his life, and to juggle this, as well as a son and a daughter, each of whom have their own needs of their mother. And by the way, a daughter who's adopted, and adopted not at birth, but at, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And for anyone who knows anything about adoption, adopting someone at that stage, again, requires enormous compassion, because children are formed. And there's only so much impact you can have. And Vicki went to Bulgaria, a country that she was very attached to because of Remy, her daughter, to adopt Remy. Loved her dearly from day one to this day, and gave Remy a whole new life. So in so many ways, I mean, Vicky embodied not just work efficiency, work commitment, but character. And again, as I said, life is character. And Vicky has been leading, in that sense, a very exemplary life, above all because of her character. So we'll miss her. The good news is that she's available, on call, so to speak, for any of us who need her for the next 5-6 months. And then she promises Harriet to return to her earlier status as lay member of AJC. So this is not a eulogy, this is an elegy. Big difference. And it goes on. So Vicky, we look forward to seeing more of you.
Here, here.